Welcome back to Alpha English Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and as always, I'm here with my amazing co-host, Luke. Hey, Luke, how are you doing today?
Hey, Lisa. I'm doing great, thanks. Super excited for today's episode, honestly. I have a feeling our listeners are going to love this one.
Oh, same. And you know what? I think today's topic is something everyone needs, whether you're a beginner or even an advanced learner. So, are you ready?
I was born ready. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. Today's topic is how to connect sentences.
Oh, yes, this is such a good one. And I feel like this is something people skip over, right? Like everyone focuses on vocabulary and grammar, but connecting sentences, that's what makes you sound fluent.
Exactly. And here's the thing. When you connect sentences well, your English just flows. It stops sounding like a list of separate facts and starts sounding like a real conversation or a real piece of writing. It's the glue that holds everything together.
And honestly, it's not that hard once you know the tools, which we are absolutely going to teach you today.
Yes. But before we dive in, quick message for everyone listening. If you are finding this helpful, please like and subscribe to Alpha English Podcast. It truly helps us grow and reach more learners just like you. One tap, that's all it takes, okay?
Please, it means the world to us. And leave us a comment, too. We love hearing from you. All right, Lisa, let's get into it.
All right. So first things first. What exactly are connecting words? Luke, want to kick us off?
Sure. So connecting words, also called connectors, linking words, or cohesive devices, are words and phrases that join ideas together. They help your listener or reader understand the relationship between two ideas. Are these ideas connected? Are they opposite? Is one the reason for the other?
Exactly. Think of them as traffic signs for your English. They tell people, hey, we're going in the same direction, or wait, here comes a turn.
Traffic signs. I love that. That's actually a perfect way to think about it.
Right? So today, we're going to go through the main categories of connectors, and we'll give you real examples, the kind of sentences you'd actually use in daily life or in writing.
And we'll also talk about common mistakes because, oh boy, there are some very common mistakes people make with connectors.
Oh, yes, we'll definitely cover those. Okay, so let's start with the most basic category, connectors that add information, things like and, also, in addition, furthermore, moreover.
Right. So these are the ones you use when you want to continue in the same direction. You said something and now you want to say more of the same kind of thing.
So, for example, instead of saying, I like coffee, I like tea, you can say, I like coffee and I also enjoy tea. See how much smoother that sounds?
Much smoother. And you can go even further. If you're writing something more formal, like an essay or a report, you might say, coffee is my morning drink. Furthermore, I find that it improves my focus.
Yes. And furthermore and moreover are more formal. You wouldn't normally say furthermore in a casual conversation with a friend.
Unless you want to sound really fancy. I'll have a burger. Furthermore, I would like fries.
Okay, yes, that would be a little weird, but that's a great point. Knowing when to use formal versus casual connectors is really important.
And that's actually a cultural tip, too. In English conversation, especially British and American English, people tend to prefer simple, natural connectors. And, also, plus. These are very common in speech. Save the big formal ones for writing.
Perfect tip, Luke. So, quick summary so far. When you want to add information, use words like and, also, in addition, furthermore, or moreover. Simple ones for speaking, formal ones for writing.
Great. Okay, let's move on to something really useful. Connecting words that show contrast. Because a lot of the time in life, we're comparing two things that are different, right?
Absolutely. So contrast connectors include but, however, although, even though, on the other hand, in spite of, despite, and nevertheless.
Okay, so let's start with the most common one, but. Super simple, super powerful. I wanted to go outside, but it was raining. Two ideas that oppose each other joined with but.
And then, however, it does the same job, but it's a bit more formal, and it usually comes at the start of a new sentence. So you'd write, I wanted to go outside, however, it was raining.
See how that gives it a slightly different feel? However, has a little more weight to it. It's like, here's the first idea, pause, now here's the contrast.
Exactly. And then we have although and even though. These are really interesting because you use them to connect two ideas in one sentence, like, although it was raining, I decided to go outside.
Right. Or even though he studied very hard, he failed the exam. The contrast is built right into the sentence.
And here's a super common mistake. People mix up although and even though with despite and in spite of. Can you explain the difference, Luke?
Yes, great point. So, although and even though are followed by a full sentence with a subject and a verb. But despite and in spite of are followed by a noun or a gerund. That's the ing form.
So, wrong, despite he studied hard. That's a very common mistake.
Right. Despite studying hard, he failed. Or despite his hard work, he failed. See the difference? After despite, noun or gerund, not a full sentence.
This is so important. I've seen this mistake so many times, even from intermediate learners, so please write this down.
Yes, take notes. Okay, let's do a quick mini summary. Contrast connectors like but and however show opposite ideas. Although and even though connect two contrasting ideas in one sentence. Despite and in spite of are followed by a noun or gerund, not a full clause.
Perfect summary, Luke. Okay, let's keep going. We're on a roll. All right, now we're getting to one of my personal favorites, cause and effect connectors. These are the ones you use to explain why something happened or what the result was.
Yes, and these are everywhere in daily English. Think about how often you explain things. I was late because of traffic. It was raining, so I took an umbrella. You're connecting a reason and a result constantly.
Exactly. So the key connectors here are because, so, therefore, as a result, due to, owing to, since, and consequently.
Let's break them down. Because introduces the reason. She was tired because she hadn't slept. Simple, direct.
So introduces the result. She hadn't slept, so she was tired. See how because and so are like two sides of the same coin?
Oh, that's such a smart way to put it. Same situation, different perspective. Because points to the cause, so points to the effect.
Right. And again, for more formal writing, therefore and consequently are your friends. The company lost revenue. As a result, several employees were let go. That's very professional sounding.
And due to, similar to because of, but again followed by a noun, not a full sentence. Due to heavy rain, the match was canceled, not due to it rained heavily.
Yes, another super common mistake. People say, due to it rained, and that's wrong. Due to equals noun. Because equals full clause. Write that down.
We keep saying write it down. Our listeners are probably running out of paper by now.
Good. That means they're learning. Okay, and there's one more I want to mention, since. Now, this one is a little tricky because since has two meanings in English. It can mean because, since it was late, we decided to leave, or it can mean from a point in time. I've been here since Monday.
Yeah, since is one of those words where context is really important. If someone says, since she moved to London, she's been happier, that could mean because she moved or from the time she moved. You kind of need context to know.
Exactly. So when you're writing, be careful with since. If there's any chance of confusion, just use because or from to be safe.
Great tip. Okay, quick recap. Because and since introduce reasons. So, therefore, as a result, and consequently introduce results. Due to and because of are followed by nouns. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about time and sequence connectors. These are the ones that tell your listener when things happened or in what order.
Yes, and these are incredibly useful when you're telling a story, giving instructions, or describing a process. Think first, then, after that, finally.
The classics. And actually, if you just learn those four, first, then, after that, finally, you can tell almost any story clearly.
Totally. Like, first I woke up, then I had breakfast, after that I went to the gym, finally I came home and rested. Clear, logical, easy to follow.
And there are more, of course: before, after, as soon as, once, while, during, eventually, previously, subsequently.
As soon as is one I really love. It means the moment something happened. As soon as I opened the door, the dog ran out. That's a very natural, native-sounding expression.
Relatable dog story right there. Once is similar. Once I finish work, I'll call you. It means after or when, as soon as that condition is complete.
And while, this one is great because it connects two things happening at the same time. While Lisa was cooking, Luke was washing the dishes, both happening simultaneously.
Ah, teamwork. That's the dream.
Exactly. And then there's during, similar to while, but followed by a noun. During the meeting, she took lots of notes. Not during the meeting was happening. That's wrong. During equals noun only.
There's that noun rule again. So many connectors follow that pattern. Despite, due to, during, because of. They all need a noun after them, not a full clause. If you remember that one rule, you'll avoid so many mistakes.
That's honestly one of the most important things we've said today. Can we say that again? If a connector is a preposition, like despite, due to, during, because of, in spite of, always follow it with a noun or gerund, not a full subject-verb sentence.
Nailed it. Okay, mini summary for time and sequence. Use first, then, after that, finally for clear step-by-step stories. Use while for simultaneous actions. Use as soon as and once for immediate sequences. And remember, during needs a noun.
Okay, let's talk about another really important group, connectors for giving examples and making things clearer. Because in real communication, you often need to illustrate what you mean.
Yes, and the most common ones here are for example, for instance, such as, like, in other words, that is, and namely.
For example and for instance are interchangeable. They both introduce a specific example to support a general statement. There are many ways to stay healthy. For example, exercising regularly and eating well.
And such as is great when you're giving a list of examples. I enjoy outdoor activities such as hiking, cycling, and swimming. Notice it flows right into the list.
And like works the same way in casual speech. I enjoy outdoor activities like hiking and cycling. Very natural, very common in conversation.
Then we have in other words, which you use when you want to rephrase something simpler. The project was not feasible. In other words, we couldn't do it with the budget we had. It's like hitting the reset button for your listener.
Reset button. I like that. And that is, or i.e., which you mainly see in writing, is similar. It introduces a clarification or restatement. She studies linguistics, that is, the science of language.
These are so helpful in academic writing especially. When you define something technical, you follow it with that is, or in other words, to make it accessible.
Absolutely. And you know what? I want to mention something about punctuation here too, because this tricks people up. When you use for example, or however, or therefore at the start of a sentence, you put a comma after it. However, I disagree. For example, coffee is a stimulant.
Yes. And when they come in the middle of a sentence, they're usually surrounded by commas. I disagree, however, with that point. Coffee, for example, is a stimulant.
People often forget those commas, and in formal writing, that's a noticeable error. So pay attention to punctuation with connectors.
Great tip. Okay, summary for this section. For example, for instance, and such as introduce examples. In other words, and that is, clarify or rephrase, and always use commas correctly around these connectors. Okay, we have a couple more categories I really want to cover, and these are the ones that make you sound really sophisticated when you use them correctly.
Ooh, yes, tell us.
So the first one is concession. Concession is when you acknowledge a point, maybe even agree with it a little, but then you say, and yet, my main point still stands. Think, admittedly, granted, of course, it is true that, while it may be true that.
So, for example, admittedly, learning a language is hard. However, with consistent practice, anyone can do it. See? I acknowledged the difficulty, I conceded that point, but then I made my main argument.
Exactly. This kind of language makes you sound very balanced and intelligent. Instead of just saying, English is easy, which sounds a bit naive, you say, admittedly, English has complex grammar, but its pronunciation is far simpler than many other languages.
That's such a great example. Concession shows that you understand different perspectives. It's very valued in academic writing, debates, and even professional conversations.
And then, emphasis. Connectors that stress or highlight a point. Things like in fact, indeed, above all, most importantly, especially, particularly, what is more, and even let alone.
In fact is one of my favorites. It's like saying, not only is what I said true, but it's even more true than you think. She's a good singer. In fact, she's one of the best I've ever heard.
That escalated nicely. And above all, that's the strongest one. You use it when you want to say, this is the most important point of everything. To learn English well, you need to practice regularly, stay motivated, and above all, never be afraid to make mistakes.
Beautiful example. And let alone, oh, this is a fun one. It's used in negative sentences to say, even the smaller thing is too much, so the bigger thing is impossible. He can't even cook rice, let alone make a full meal.
Oh, that is such a relatable sentence. He can't even make tea, let alone coffee. The things people say in my family.
Same. Okay, quick summary. Concession words like admittedly and granted acknowledge a counterpoint before you make your main argument. Emphasis words like in fact, indeed, and above all strengthen and highlight your key ideas.
Okay, Luke, we've covered so much ground today. Should we do a little exercise? Like real-life scenarios where our listeners can see all these connectors working together?
Yes, I love this idea. Let's do it.
Great. Okay, imagine this. You're writing an email to your boss explaining why a project is delayed. Let's build some sentences using connectors.
All right, so you might start with, the project has unfortunately been delayed. Due to unexpected technical issues, we were unable to meet the original deadline. However, significant progress has been made in the past week. In fact, we have now completed 70% of the work. Therefore, we anticipate delivering the final product by next Friday. We apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused.
Wow, see how polished and professional that sounds? Let's count the connectors. Due to, however, in fact, therefore. 4 different types in just 5 sentences.
Exactly. And none of them feel forced or unnatural. They each serve a purpose. Reason, contrast, emphasis, result.
Now let's do a more casual, conversational example. Imagine you're telling a friend about your weekend. Sure. So you might say, I had such a crazy weekend. First, I was supposed to go hiking on Saturday, but it rained all day, so I ended up staying home and watching movies instead. Although I was a bit disappointed at first, I actually had a really good time. I watched 3 films. Then, on Sunday, the weather was perfect, so I went for a long walk in the park. As a result, I feel way more relaxed now. In other words, it wasn't the weekend I planned, but it turned out great.
Ah, That is so natural, and it's full of connectors. But, so, although, then, as a result, in other words, all used perfectly, and it just flows like real conversation.
That's the goal. When connectors become natural to you, when you're not thinking, which connector do I use here, that's when your English truly starts to feel fluent.
And the way to get there is practice. Honestly, every time you write a message, an email, a journal entry, try to include at least 3 different types of connectors, consciously at first, and then over time it becomes automatic.
That is amazing advice. And you know, reading and listening in English helps so much too, because when you see and hear these connectors in context, your brain starts to absorb them naturally. Podcasts, books, TV shows, all of it helps.
Like this podcast, for example.
Exactly. Meta. We're literally using connectors to talk about connectors.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to do a quick roundup of the most common mistakes people make with connectors, because we've mentioned some throughout the episode, but I want to put them all in one place.
Great idea. Let's do it.
Mistake number 1, using despite with a full clause. Wrong, despite he was tired. Right, despite being tired or despite his tiredness.
Mistake number 2, using due to with a full clause. Wrong, due to it was raining. Right, due to the rain or because it was raining.
Mistake number 3, using however as if it were but. You cannot just swap them. But joins 2 clauses in one sentence. However usually starts a new sentence or clause separated by a period or semicolon.
So, wrong, I was tired, however I continued working. Better, I was tired, however I continued working. Or, I was tired, however I continued working.
Mistake number 4, forgetting commas. For example, however, therefore, moreover. When they come at the beginning of a sentence or in the middle, they need commas. Always.
Mistake number 5, overusing so. In casual conversation, so is fine, but in formal writing, it can sound weak. Use therefore or as a result instead.
And mistake number 6, using only simple connectors. If you always use and, but, and so, your writing feels flat. Mix it up. Use different connectors for variety and sophistication.
These 6 mistakes, honestly, fixing just these will improve your English dramatically. I'm not exaggerating.
Absolutely agree. Write them down, review them, and check your writing against these 6 points whenever you can.
Wow, Lisa, what an episode! I feel like we've covered basically everything someone needs to know about connecting sentences. Should we do a full recap?
Yes, let's bring it all home. Okay, so today on Alpha English Podcast, we talked about how to connect sentences, also known as using linking words or cohesive devices.
We covered 6 main categories of connectors. First, addition connectors, like and, also, furthermore, moreover, for adding information.
Second, contrast connectors, like but, however, although, even though, despite, in spite of, for showing opposing ideas.
Third, cause and effect, because, so, therefore, due to, as a result, for explaining reasons and results.
Fourth, time and sequence, like first, then, after that, finally, while, as soon as, for organizing events in time.
Fifth, examples and clarification. For example, such as, in other words, for illustrating and explaining your points.
And sixth, concession and emphasis, like admittedly, granted, in fact, above all, indeed, for acknowledging and stressing key ideas.
And we went through 6 super common mistakes to avoid, especially the ones about despite, due to, and however. Please remember those.
And most importantly, we saw how using a mix of these connectors makes your English sound natural, fluent, and confident, whether you're writing an email, telling a story, or having a conversation.
You know what I want to say to everyone listening? Learning English is a journey, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming.
There's so much to learn. But here's the truth. Every single word you learn, every connector you practice, every sentence you write, it all adds up.
It really does. And the fact that you're here, listening to this episode, investing time in yourself, that already puts you ahead. You're doing something that many people wish they would do, but never start.
So don't stop. Keep going. Practice those connectors. Write a few sentences today using what we learned, even just 3 or 4 sentences. That small action will make a difference.
And we will be right here every episode to walk you through more. That's a promise from us to you. So make sure you're subscribed to Alpha English Podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if today's episode helped you, please share it with a friend who's learning English. Word of mouth is honestly the best gift you can give us. And drop a comment or a review. We read every single one.
This has been such a great episode, Luke. I loved every minute of it.
Same. Best co-host in the business right here.
You're too sweet. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening to Alpha English Podcast. This is Lisa.
And this is Luke.
And we will see you in the next episode. Keep learning, keep growing, and above all, keep speaking English. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.